With Alexander II now a tiny bit dead, his son, Alexander, became the Tsar of Russia. His reign is often seen as one of reversals of his father's reforms. Naturally, he was angry at those who had killed his father, and reacted with an approach of uncompromising authoritarianism. He made this clear in his Manifesto of Unshakable Autocracy in 1881, where he announced that he would not grant Russia a constitution for anything on earth. In this video, we'll look at Alexander III's reversals of his father's policies and the few aspects where he advanced them. In 1881, the Statute of State Security was introduced, giving the government the emergency powers to prohibit gatherings of more than 12 people, to prosecute anyone for political crimes, to set up social courts outside the legal system, and to close schools, universities, and newspapers at will. Most of these measures stayed in place until 1917, despite being dubbed temporary. Furthermore, the infamous secret police, the Okhrana, was set up in the same year and given the power to put any civilian under surveillance. In 1884, the University Statute brought in strict control of universities, courses for women were banned, the church was given more control of primary education, and fees in schools were raised to exclude lower classes. In 1890, the Zemstva Act reduced the independence of the Zemstva. Provincial governors could now veto or amend Zemstva decisions. Further local government reforms came in 1892, the Municipal Government Act, cutting down the number of people allowed to vote dramatically. For example, in St. Petersburg, only 0.7% of the population were eligible to vote for city dumas. Alexander III's reign was not one of complete reactionary policies, however. There was modernization and industrialization. In 1885, laws were passed to restrict child labour and limit the working hours for women at night. In 1882, the new finance minister, Nikolai Bunge, introduced measures to help peasants and improved working conditions for workers. In 1883, he set up the Peasant Land Bank, which aimed to help peasants buy land and abolish the poll tax and lowered the redemption payments. In 1885, he established Nobles Land Bank, which lent money to the nobles at low interest rates to pay off debts or invest in land. Despite these measures, they mostly failed to make much of an impact due to later reforms. Another way in which Alexander III advanced his father's reforms, although definitely not a positive one, was Russification. The process had begun at the end of his father's rule and was vigorously promoted under Alexander III and Nicholas II. The main implementations of Russification under Alexander III were that Russian officials were brought in to run regional governments in the non-Russian parts of the empire. Around 100,000 Muslim Tatars were forcibly converted to the Orthodox Church, and Jews were forced to live in areas called Pale of Settlements on the easternmost edge of the empire. In terms of economic developments, under the new Minister of Finance, Vishnegradsky, there was a surplus income between 1887 and 1897. Vishnegradsky achieved this by attracting foreign investment through raising taxes and tariffs. In 1891, import duties were increased to 33%, raising a loss of revenue. This had a beneficial effect on domestic coal and pig iron production. Between 1885 and 1890 alone, coal production increased from 6 million to 9 million tons. This rapid growth put the peasantry under a lot of pressure. Grain exports were increased by 18% as a percentage of total exports between 1881 to 1891. It was a vital component of Vishnegradsky's policies. He's even quoted as saying, "We must go hungry, but we shall export." His policies ultimately led to the catastrophic 1891 famine, which spread from the Volga River to as far as the Ural Mountains and the Black Sea. It's estimated that around 400,000 would die from starvation in this time period alone. The catastrophic famine cost Vishnegradsky his job, and he was replaced in 1893 by Sergei Witte. Sergei Witte's policies would be the last push for Russia to catch up to its economic rivals. However, these will have to be looked at in the next video. Alexander III suddenly died in November 1894 of kidney disease, aged 49. His policies had successfully restored the regime's political authority and had begun to push Russia in the right direction economically. However, due to his sudden death, he had little time to prepare his son, Nicholas, with the enormous task of ruling the empire, and as we'll see in the next video, this would prove to be the end of Romanov rule in Russia.